Welcome to Bright Ideas. I am Jessica Duemig, and I am here today with Alfred B. White. Hi, Alfred.
Good afternoon. How are we doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. I read that your friends call you ABW. Should I call you ABW today?
You're more than welcome to there. I think you're a part of the circle that actually is entitled to call me ABW there. So welcome.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm pumped to have you on this podcast. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. You've done some amazing things, right? You've been part of the NCAA, NBA Development League. You've been with CFP. You've been with Conference USA. Years. Take me through your bio. Tell me your story, the story of ABW.
Well, this is the only industry I've ever been in is sports, and 99% of it has been college sports. And so I kind of wonder if something had happened along the way, what else would I have done? That's a $64,000 question, I guess. But it all got started in high school when I was attempting to play baseball, and I got myself hurt, and I had a baseball coach that apparently liked me, and I didn't know it at the time, but when I got hurt and basically had a career-ending injury,
Mm.
he helped me redefine my career path. And again, I didn't even know it when it was happening. But he helped me get a job as a public address announcer, official scorer, and I would do articles for the Houston Post and the Houston Chronicle. I'm a native of Houston, Texas. Son of a United Methodist minister. Again, I was trying to play baseball in high school, and my high school baseball coach got me this job, and it turned out to be an unbelievable job. I was announcing high school baseball games at this facility where my high school would play its games. We didn't play our games on our high school campus. We would play them at a central facility, and I would go through my junior year as the public address announcer at this facility. That particular summer, the summer college baseball league that would also play at this facility, they hired me to do the same kind of work, and that was where things took a turn towards my college end of my story, because in the summertime, college head coaches would come to this facility and scout, junior college and high school players that had not made their decisions on where they were going to go yet. And
But
they would
back
come to
before
the press
social
box.
media,
Yeah, exactly.
a little bit.
Way before social media, I guess you would say. And so, they would come to the press box. They would get their rosters from me. They would get statistics from me. What are you hearing about where this young man is going to go to school? They would get that kind of information from me. And so I was a happy hunting ground for those guys.
I
Um,
bet.
and I ended up, having wonderful relationships with several, college baseball head coaches and some assistant coaches as well. But the head baseball coach at Texas Tech, it was not always just the business of his particular program that he would come and inquire about after he would get all of that pertinent information about the players that were playing in the league. There was a time when the conversation would turn to Alfred White, and he would want to know, well, what are you thinking about doing for college? Because at that point, he would have known that I was a high school junior and hadn't made up my mind yet about where I was going to go to college. And so I told him that Texas Tech was on my list, and he would go, well, I hope it rises to the top of your list. And so this conversation going on during my junior year. And then my senior year would come along. Um, and that particular year, I was announcing games at this facility as well. And he came to check out some players during the actual high school season. And so school was still in session, and it's my senior year. He had been there. He came just before the end of the school year, and he would want to know if I was still thinking about Texas Tech. And I said, absolutely. And he goes, well, when are you going to make up your mind? And I told him, well, my prom is in a couple of weeks. My best buddy and I, we're going to hop on an airplane and go out to Lubbock and check out Texas Tech. Back in those days, Southwest Airlines was just getting started, and we were able to get a round trip ticket from Houston to Lubbock for $50. And so we got on an airplane and flew out to Lubbock and took a tour. Well, during that conversation with Cal Segrist, was the baseball coach's name at Texas Tech, and he said, "Well, when you're out there, I'm going to give you two names of people to go see." He said one of them's name is Ralph Carpenter, and the other one's name is Don Henry. And he said, "Go talk to those folks, tell them your story, and see where those conversations take you." So the day after our prom, we hopped on an airplane and we flew out to West Texas, and we got in a cab and went to the campus, and the cab dropped us off in the middle of campus. My best friend, a fellow named John Perry, he was going to be in the band, so
Okay.
he figured out where the band hall was. I was headed to the football stadium, and so in a distance, I could see the lights at the football stadium, and so I figured that's where I would find Ralph Carpenter. And so we decided that we would meet back up at the middle of campus later on in the afternoon, and so off we went. And so I went to the football stadium, and I find the athletic department, and I'm wandering around lost like an 18-year-old. And eventually, a gentleman comes out and says, "Young man, can I help you?" And so I told him my story, and he goes, "Come on into my office, sir. Let's sit down and talk some more." And so this person ended up being a legendary former Texas Tech men's basketball coach by the name of Polk Robinson, and
Okay.
he interrogated me a little bit more, and he must have liked what he heard, because he said, "Well, you came here to see Ralph Carpenter, and Ralph is away on vacation,
Oh,
but I like your story, and I'm going to tell Ralph to put you to work." I said, "Okay, that'd be awesome." And he said, "I'm also going to see if he's got any money left in his student assistant scholarship fund, because I want him to give some of that money to you." And I go, "That would be awesome. That'd be great."
yeah.
And so, off I went. Um, I never did go find Don Henry. Don Henry was the sports editor of the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, the local newspaper, because I was so excited with this conversation that I'd had with Coach Robinson that I didn't feel like I wanted to go hear anything about the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. And
Right.
so, um, the rest of the afternoon, I just kind of wandered around the campus, and I wound back up in the middle of campus and met up with my buddy, and we got back on an airplane and went home that evening. And so it was I figured it was a great day's work out in Lubbock, and I eventually caught up with Ralph on the telephone. He told me about the great conversation he had with Coach Robinson, and
Wow.
that I could come back to work, just about the time that football practice was starting. And so we agreed, and I wound up at Texas Tech as a freshman in the fall of 1975. And so I get there, and I ultimately worked in the athletic department as a student assistant in the sports information office from day one. And
Wow.
I did it for 4.5 years. That was the best experience a young person could ever have. And I didn't even know it at the time there, but I figured that I became a case study in relationship development and relationship management because I had this relationship with the baseball coach, um, and he got me out there to Texas Tech. Ultimately, I was the baseball SID at Texas Tech the whole time that I was a student. Even when
Wow.
I was a freshman, didn't know up from down, but he let me work my way into that position. It started off as keeping score and writing press releases. I ultimately became that plus. That's where I got my start in marketing. He and I dreamed up the idea of the Double T Dolls. It was a organization of young ladies that wanted to help us promote the baseball program. And so it was, like I said, it was really a neat experience for me that helped me, shape what I was going to do professionally going forward. And it was awesome. It was really awesome there. I got
Isn't,
to
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was going to say, isn't it crazy how what I imagine at the time, you're going through your life, you're playing baseball, season ending injury, career ending injury, and you're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? And then all of a sudden, you fall into PA, which is crazy. I never knew you were a PA announcer. We have that in common. Super cool. You fall into it, and then all of a sudden you're at Texas Tech on student assistant scholarship money and baseball SID from, like you said, day one, still doing what you loved in baseball, but also now with more of a career path than, probably you would have had in baseball. I mean, I imagine you were good, but I mean, so few people make the pros, right? But here you are now looking back, you've got to be like, wow, things happen for a reason.
Oh, absolutely. I really do believe that things happen for a reason. There were a variety of episodes around baseball and working in the athletic department that we probably don't have enough time for on the podcast today. But it was really kind of cool and funny at the time, and extra funny and cool even now as I recall some of the things that happened. But it was an experience that I'll never forget, and I'm forever grateful for the opportunity to attend Texas Tech and go to college out there. I remain a Texas Tech fan to this day. I live in a suburb of Kansas City, and the Big 12 men's basketball tournament is here, and I always go and see the athletics director and other folks that are still involved with the program whenever they're in the area there. I'm a Red Raider for life, and so it's really something that I know that when people have these relationships with their colleges and universities that they're doing it for a reason, because it's a really a life-changing experience that is hard to it's hard to replicate in other areas. And so I'm forever thankful for Texas Tech being a part of my life. So after I graduated from Tech, um, the other thing that I learned during those 4.5 years was the art of making connections, and also developing relationships. I can talk about it now like it was a grand plan of some kind, but when it was happening in real time, I didn't know what the heck was happening. As it turns out, in those 4.5 years, I was developing a network, and at the time, that's that's a big buzzword now. But back then, I was just meeting people, being nice to people,
Yeah.
having people say nice things to me, and me saying nice things to them.
What a
And
concept.
when, yeah, exactly.
Meeting
And
people, talking to people, saying nice
oh
things,
yeah,
being
yeah,
accountable. Who knew?
right, exactly. That's for sure. And then so when it's time for me to graduate, I'm running into all of these people, a lot of these people that I had met over the course of my college student career, and they say, so what's next for you? And sometimes I'd say I don't know, and sometimes I'd say, well, I've been in contact with this institution, this team, about going to work for them and things like that. And there were an unbelievable amount of people that were ready to help me with that next step. And again, I was honored, I was humbled, I was thankful that people would take that kind of interest in me. Um, I wasn't real sure that that had ever happened for me and around me in my life before, but it was happening for me then. I'll never forget. The baseball coach at Texas A&M. Um, had met me and liked me during my time at Texas Tech. He and the baseball coach at Texas Tech were really good friends, and he arranged for me to get a an interview with the St. Louis Baseball Cardinals. Um, and I'll never forget that. I flew from. I was at home at the time in Houston on Christmas holiday, and they flew me to St. Louis, and I was picked up at the airport and driven to this round Holiday Inn in downtown St. Louis. And they interviewed me for a job, and so this was going to be my first interview ever, and I was really nervous. Had jotted down some questions on the airplane that I wanted to ask when I got there. Um, Turns out I didn't ask all the right questions, but I did ask some questions. I did have the wherewithal to want to know, well, is there a job description? Um, and there was none. Um, and then and I said, okay, so what will I do? And they said, well, we'll have to figure that out. And so I'm going, okay. Um, I said, well, how'd you hear about me? And turns out that Henry Aaron was playing for the Atlanta Braves back at about that time, and had made an observation that there were very few people of color in front offices in Major League Baseball. Um, and so he had said this on television, and the commissioner at the time, heard about it and put an all points bulletin out to all of the Major League Baseball teams. And all of them got to scurrying around and started to figure out ways to get some people of color in front offices. And so the Cardinals had put word out in their among their scouts, and their scout that handled the state of Texas had said something to the head baseball coach at Texas A&M. The head baseball coach at Texas A&M said something to the baseball coach at Texas Tech, and I get this interview. Um, and so they fly me up there and have really no idea what they want me to do or anything like that. And so I end up telling them, I hope I get a call from you guys and we can talk further about this job. And so I go home and I get a call from them, and they tell me they want to offer me this job.
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, this is awesome." Um, because I'd heard even when I was a senior in college that you go on job interviews, you're not supposed to ask about salary. and all that kind of stuff. And so I didn't. Um, but when they called back and offered me the job, I said, and they never did openly mention anything about salary. And so curiosity got the cat, I guess. I ended up saying, so what is the salary for this job?
Oh boy.
And yeah, and the guy says, well, it's $7,900. And I said, $7,900. So this is 1980, or actually it was 1979. That it was in December of 1979. I just graduated earlier that month. Um, but it's and that was not a whole lot of money in 1979. I said $7,900, huh? And I said, uh, and I said, well, tell you what, let me visit with my parents, and I'll call you back. And so I didn't even visit with my parents. I gave it a couple of days, and I called them back and said, I don't know that I can swing $7,900. I don't know anybody in St. Louis where I might be able to, maybe share an apartment or something. I don't. I don't know how I can make this work. Um, and he said, well, think about it a couple more days, and I'll call you back. And so I said, okay. And so he called me back in a couple of days, and I told him, well, my mind hadn't changed. He said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not coming to St. Louis for $7,900. I found it kind of ironic, when I was there for that interview. I don't know if you remember the name Keith Hernandez or not.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but Keith Hernandez and I were sitting in the lobby at the same time. Keith Hernandez was a free agent, and he was up there negotiating $1 million deal. That was back when $1 million was a lot of money.
Yeah.
uh, but so he was there, talking to the general manager about his $1 million deal. He ended up getting his million, but they only wanted to pay me 7,900. And I guess they're investing all their money in Keith and not me. But and so anyway, I ultimately did not take this job with the baseball Cardinals. Um,
Wow.
and I go back to Houston, and in the meantime, Texas Tech ends up offering me a job as assistant sports information director, full time job as assistant sports information director, and I took it. And I end up, staying there for a little over 3 years. And over the course of those 3 years, my boss, Ralph Carpenter, introduced me to a gentleman named by the name of Dave K. Wood. And Dave K. Wood at the time was director of public relations for the NCAA. And I guess it was the spring of 1983. Dave called and said that he had a job he wanted to interview me for. Actually, he said I had two jobs I want to interview you for. I said, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait!" And so I flew to Kansas City, and the jobs that they had, one was a statistics coordinator, another one was a marketing coordinator. And as we were talking about these jobs, um, the marketing coordinator job was of more interest to me than the statistics coordinator job. When as a sports information director, you do a lot of stats, and I didn't mind doing stats, but that was not my favorite thing to do. Um, but I mentioned to you that the baseball coach and I had partnered on marketing and promotion opportunities around the baseball program, and I found that a lot of fun. And so as he was describing the marketing coordinator job for me, that was something that I really wanted to pursue career wise going forward. And so I told him that well, I think I like this marketing coordinator job more than I like the statistics coordinator job. And he said, okay, well, we still got some people to talk to. Um, I'll be back in touch. So it was a couple of days later, he calls back and he says, all right, we want to offer you a job. And I said, awesome. That's great. He says, it's the statistics coordinator's job.
Oh no.
And he goes, um, and, I, and he goes, when can you be here? And I said, well, golly, I don't know if I don't know if I really want that particular job. He says, I said, I think respectfully, I'm going to turn it down. I know this might be not, this might not be a good idea, but I don't think I would enjoy that job as much as I would the other job. And he goes, well, I respect that. Some people would probably take a job they don't want just to get a foot in the door, um, and then come and be miserable. And I said, I think that would definitely be me. I don't want to come there and be miserable. And so, like I said, this was in the spring of 1983. Come about September of 1983, there was some other movement in the communications department at the NCAA. A fellow left and went to work for the Kansas City Royals. They made some moves around the communications department, and there was a job called the assistant director of communications that came open. Ralph called, not Ralph, but Dave called me back, and he was telling me about all of these moves that they had made, and he thought that I might like this job, and so he said, "Come on back up, we'll interview you again." And so I said, "Okay, I'll be there." And so after I go through this gauntlet of people, it was a different interviewing experience from the previous job that I had, because this job was a little bit more managerial. The other job was a coordinator position. And this particular job was an assistant director. And so it was a different interview experience. And so after I got done with all of the interviews, it was the end of the day, right before I was going back to the airport to fly back to Texas. He said, you know, I have to admit to you, I really respected you for turning down that statistics coordinator's job several months ago. Um, some people, like I told you back then, some people would have probably just taken it to get a foot in the door and think that they could maneuver their way around. There's never any promises about getting a foot in the door and maneuvering your way around. You didn't want to take that chance, and I have a lot of respect for you for doing it. He said, "I'm going to offer you this job right now." He said,
Wow.
and I said, "And I'm going to take it right now."
Awesome. That's so
I remember,
cool.
yeah, I remember telling him that, and even we ended up working together for a long time. He ended up leaving the NCAA. Um, uh, I guess this would have been in the early 1990s. He ended up leaving the NCAA, and then he passed away after he left. But he ended up being probably the best mentor I had in the industry. He was somebody that I could talk to when he worked there. He was somebody I could talk to when he didn't work there, and gosh, I remember feeling pretty lost after he passed away and everything. He's somebody I think about all the time there. But and I'll never forget that experience of those two jobs that were available at the NCAA that I was up for, and the one I turned down, and the one I took. So ultimately I end up spending almost 15 years at the NCAA, and I had some fabulous experiences. I worked on 15 Final Fours. I worked on
Wow.
all kinds of College World Series, the hockey championship, the lacrosse championship. Um, I got myself to be on loan to the championships department to run the Division II baseball championship. I worked on it was called the 1AA football championship back then. It's now called FCS. But it was that was a cool project that I got to work on, and all those experiences um, helped me be prepared for becoming a commissioner. And so I became commissioner of the Southern Conference in 1998, and left Kansas City, and went to Asheville, North Carolina, to be commissioner of the Southern Conference. Turns out that was the best job I ever had in my career. You know, I made a career mistake of feeling like I needed to check a box that I always kind of had in the back of my mind. I always kind of thought that I wanted to work in pro sports. I know that I had that opportunity with the baseball Cardinals. Then there was also the Washington Redskins um, made a wild approach to get me to come to work for them. Ultimately turned that one down because they wanted me to be a spy in the locker room on some players that might be doing drugs. And I said, well, there's no way I can come do that. And I got a click on the other side of the phone. And so, but like I said, I always had this thought in the back of my mind that I wanted to work in pro sports. And so, I met some folks during my time at the NCAA that helped the NBA put together the development league, the NBA development league. And when they were getting that program off the ground, they wanted to have a franchise in Asheville, and they didn't know anybody, but they knew me, and I helped them make that thing happen. And at the time that they made it happen, they said, you ought to be the president of this team. And early on, I said no, and I probably said no a good 10, 12 times, and they finally got me to say yes. And um, uh, it didn't take long for me to figure out that that was a mistake. Because I went to some sales meetings within a week or two of getting the job, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I'd always kind of had in my mind that you know um, the pro sports teams, gosh, they get it going. You turn on the TV and all of their arenas were full. It looked so polished. Everything was so wonderful. I go to one of these sales meetings right out of the box, and I'm going, darn, I think I probably could have picked up what I learned there in a weekend seminar as opposed to having to change my career path to go work for the NBA. And so I toughed it out for 3 years, working for the NBA and working for the Asheville Altitude. We won some league championships. I met some wonderful people. I'm always going to find good people to know in whatever setting I'm in. And so I got to know some good people through that experience. And but at the end of the day, I felt like I needed to get back to college athletics as quick as I could. And so in 2004, I had an opportunity to go back to Texas, live in Dallas, Texas, and work for Conference USA. I went back as an associate commissioner. I became responsible for football operations, baseball operations, and public affairs. I ultimately also took responsibility for men's golf. That was a good recovery position for me. I was able to get back to my beloved college athletics and resurrect my career in college sports. And so I did that for 12 years. And
and that's how we met. We met through what is now the Gasparilla Bowl, way
right,
back when it
the
was the
St.
St.
Pete Bowl.
Petersburg Bowl. Yeah,
Exactly.
man,
That's for
take it way
sure.
back.
Yeah, yeah. And so by this time, the college football playoff has started, and the executive director was um, my best friend, one of my best friends, Bill Hancock. And so the first couple of years, they got it going. They were headquartered zero point 0.9 miles away from Conference USA. In fact, they borrowed some office space from us when they very first got started.
Oh, wow.
But then their permanent office space was down the street from where Conference USA was. And after the second year of the college football playoff, their senior director of marketing and strategic partnerships left to go back to Florida, and I took over his job. And so I moved down the street and did that job for 6 national championship games. Again, had a ton of fun, particularly working with my good friend Mr. Hancock, and it was a really cool gig. Um, the pandemic hits in around 2020, and my wife that I met when I was at the NCAA had a brother that was living in Charlottesville, Virginia, and he lost his partner to cancer. And so my wife was in Virginia consoling him with her other 2 siblings, and they decided that it would be a cool idea if we were all back in Kansas City together again. And so uh, I wasn't real sure it was actually going to happen. They told me about this plan that was being hatched, and they came to me first. And in my mind, I knew how much her brother in Virginia loved Virginia, and I'm going. I think what I'll do is I'll say yes, knowing that ultimately it'll be a no. Um, but then the script got flipped. He said yes, and then he came back to me. Okay, so everybody's on board. How about you? And I said, well, my wife has followed me all over the place throughout my career, and so I feel like I can acquiesce and do something for her. And so I did, and here we are. And so we moved back here to Kansas City in the right after the 2022 CFP National Championship game in Indianapolis, and I left the CFP without a job, um, and also thinking that this might be the time for me to start my own business. And so I decided to start the business ABW Building Bridges, with the idea of doing just about anything anybody could ever need help with. Considering that I'd been in the business 40 plus years, and I'd seen a lot of things, and I was um, uh, glad to be able to help someone get from one place to another in the industry. Well, in the fall of 22, my wife developed some health challenges, and so I rearranged my life to be her caregiver. But then I didn't give up my business. I wanted to continue to be uh, active and connected with as many people as possible. And so I decided not to be anything and everything to everybody. I decided what I would be is what I would call is a sports business matchmaker. I would
I
be
like that.
available to help people get from one place to another in the industry. It may be somebody that is already in the industry and have kind of hit a roadblock and can't get to the next place that they're trying to get to. Or I could be helpful to somebody that has a product or service that wants to get into the industry, and they don't know who to talk with. And so that's basically where the business has landed. I am, you know, thoroughly excited about continuing to help people, um, get into the business, move their businesses forward. I can certainly be helpful to people that are trying to translate what's going on in the industry these days. I certainly got an opinion about it. I'm not working in it as a practitioner any longer, but being able to help people understand exactly what's going on and maybe have an idea too about how they move forward is something that I'm happy to do these days.
That's great. It feels like some of your, I mean, you had such amazing opportunities. It feels like some of your no's were just as important as some of your yeses,
Well,
maybe
I would
more
like to think
important.
so.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's you could always turn a no into a yes. It's very difficult to turn a yes into a no there. And I think I think at the end of the day, my career has been pretty charmed. And I don't know that uh, anyone has had as charmed a career as I has. I guess I'm I'm a little biased. I think that our industry is one of the coolest in business. But I'm happy to have been a part of it for as long as I have.
Yeah, and I mean you've brought a ton of people along the way. I feel like everyone I talk to is like, "Wait, how do you know Alfred?" And it's like, "Wait, how do you know Alfred?" And it's so funny to see I think you nailed it with your business name and being that matchmaker because you know so many people and you made a point of it that you're a case study in relationship development starting way back, right at the beginning of your career and that is so important. I think that that's one of the biggest things that this next generation, so to speak, is missing out on from for a couple of reasons. One, being completely dependent on social media, which is probably the most unsocial thing you can do. But then also, in this world, this post-COVID world, the sports industry's changed a little bit, but there's an entire block of kids who never had even in-person class like those
Mhm.
interpersonal relationship development skills are not present and it is
Right.
fully evident when it comes out and what would you suggest to people who maybe weren't gifted or inherently or organically taught or trained on how to network to use the buzzword that you were talking about earlier network and make meaningful connections with people.
Well, I don't think it's anything. I don't think there's a fancy strategy or anything. I think it's um, making sure that you put yourself in settings where you're meeting people, you're talking with people, you're getting to know people, and you're making yourself social. I don't know if there's any classes at the college level where professors are peeping are teaching kids life skills that include just making yourself available to get to know people. Check your phones at the front door. Don't feel like you need your phone to be social there, and it very well could make some people uncomfortable if they don't have their phones on their hip. But check them at the front door and make you have to have a full on conversation with somebody. And I would imagine that if, if that would happen in college, I think by the time a semester ended, somebody's ability to communicate would be much improved over from when they started that particular class.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so in my role, I talk to a lot of younger, college students, interns. I'm always sitting next to them, whether I'm producing and they're down on the field kind of helping out, or I'm PA announcing and they are running the scoreboard or whatever. And I remember distinctly, I was down in Miami and I started trying to chat with this girl next to me. And it was as if I was like trying to give her the plague. I would say, "Oh, hey, how are you?" She'd be like, "Good." Back to the phone. I'm like, "Oh, okay. I'm great. Thanks. What's your name?" And I mean, we were going to be there for
Yeah.
8 hours next to each other. And it's just insane. And
Right.
I think, I think that that is changing a little bit now. But you're right. I think just putting yourself out there, getting yourself into those situations to be social, and really just having the confidence to go out there and say, look, hey, I'm so and so. This is what I want to do or like to do or whatever. I think too, people in general have a hard time asking for help, right? There's this,
Right.
I feel it sometimes. Well, I'm an adult. I'm supposed to know everything that I'm ever going to
Right.
know by now. And God forbid I
Yeah.
look weak and have to ask a question and look dumb. And it's like, well, so look dumb for 5 minutes, but guess what? You may take one little itsy bitsy step back and then catapult forward to
Exactly.
do the
Exactly.
job better with that information you so dumbly asked for.
Right. Right. Well, and I would also hope that I'll call them kids for lack of a better word at this particular point. But I hear from kids from time to time, and they're contacting me when they're about to finish college, or they've been out of college and maybe they've been to some kind of grad school, and they're calling me about so how do I get into this industry? And
Four years ago, kid.
yeah, exactly. I would have. I said, my gosh, I wish we were having this conversation as you were exiting high school, and that catches a bunch of them by surprise. And they say, "Are you kidding?" And I said, "No, I'm not kidding at all. Because you've just gone through a college experience where you could have used your time." In college to build a network and make up a whole host of folks that could help you get to where you want to be now. And I know a lot of kids they get out of high school and they go to college and they don't really know what to major in or know what to what career direction they want to go in. Uh, and all I say is get uncomfortable and buck up and make some decisions about where you want to be, 5 years from now, because it's not the 1980s and 1990s anymore. There's a lot more kids that are college educated. Um, Seems to me there are a lot more kids that have graduate degrees now than there were 25, 30 years ago. And so I think the marketplace is just saturated with people that have fancy college degrees. And if you get out of college with an undergraduate degree, that's to me that kind of feels like somebody that's showing up in the workplace with basically a high school degree. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's getting more and more competitive. But at the same time, it's kind of like a concept of all dressed up and nowhere to go, right? All these kids, you go through college, you go to grad school, you get some, in some cases, arbitrary degree just to get one, even an MBA
Right.
in some cases. And then you're like, cool, now what do I do? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
to your point,
Exactly.
how were you not thinking about this 4, 5, 6 years ago, even as at least a junior going into your core classes? I mean, and you're right. I think just do something. If worst case, you realize, oh, I don't want to do statistics the rest of my career. Cool.
Right.
On to the next. Pick something
Yep.
else. And it's funny
Yep.
how they get paralyzed with just stagnation,
Yep. Yep. That's for
so.
sure.
All right, so talk to me about what you're working on now. I know you said you are the sports industry matchmaker, which I love that concept because I think it's so relevant on so many levels to being in the dating world, which first person data here sucks. So what are you working on? What are you looking for? How can anyone who's watching this help you? What should they come to you to talk about? Pitch it. What are you working on?
Well, I've got what I would call a diverse portfolio of clients right now that have a variety of products and services that they are trying to move along in the sports industry. It's uh, really fascinating that technology is as prevalent in sports today than it was when I first got into it. There are companies that have big ideas about how they can make getting tasks done a lot easier. I think people understand how getting people to make buying decisions around sports. How people make up their mind to make buying decisions, whether it's tickets, whether it's merchandise, whether it's making a parking decision when you go to an event, whether it's food and beverage. There are all kinds of uh, products and services that are out there to help people, make up their mind about, making their experience around sports events even better. And so I've got clients that they come up with these wonderful ideas, but then they are a little thin on knowing who to talk to. Um, whether it's getting into the business at the very beginning, or somebody that's been in the business and they've kind of found themselves at either a roadblock or a crossroads as to how they go forward. And so, um, I think I'm always open to having conversations with people that feel like they've got a great idea for a product or a great idea for a service, and I am happy to have a conversation with them about making sure that they've got something that's a better mousetrap, I guess, and then introducing them to people that could very well have an interest in using their product or their service to make their particular situations better.
I love that. I love that so much. I think that connecting people is such a important part of this world, and obviously, as we've talked about so much. So, um, definitely, if you're watching this, we'll put Alfred's contact information in the write-up. So we'll make sure you have that. Get in touch with him if you have that product, or if you are that person who maybe wants to help amplify some of these projects. Alfred, this has been amazing. I really, really appreciate your background. I mean, it's so interesting to hear again just how that baseball injury led to PA announcing and stats and data and SID and commissioner and the no's that came with the yeses and moving when you had to, but putting family first when it mattered. I mean, it's so amazing. Thank you so much for being on Bright Ideas.
Well, thanks for having me. This has been an exciting project to be a part of.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, tune in to the next one as well. Stay tuned for more information on that. Thanks for watching Bright Ideas.